Margaux Everett, and I'm the founder of the Australian Museum of Design. And I'm talking today with Professor Peter McNeil, Head of Design for UTS in Sydney. And I'm speaking with Peter on a chair that we were given. This chair was, as you can see, an abandoned chair on the side of the road. And it was like, quick, go get it, go save it. And so the person ran back down and picked it up and delivered it to us. And we worked together to go through our gallery of designs. And we picked a beautiful design, and it's called Songbird. And we were so delighted with the outcome of it. And as you can see, we had it completely refurbed. And what I really enjoy about it, it's a whole movement of upcycling. So rather than getting those gorgeous design chairs that have a history and have a story and leaving them out on the street, upcycling and making them, give them another life, which is what we're all about at the Australian Museum of Design. But I was particularly taken with it. So I asked our dear friend Peter if he would, if he knew a bit about it, and if he did, if he could talk to us. So over to you, Peter, and thank you so much for joining us. It's lovely to see you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Margot. Yes, I'm delighted as a design historian, a kind of unusual profession in Australia. There's not that many of us. It's very common in Britain. But I was thrilled to see this chair and also to think a bit about this concept of upcycling, which is sort of old and new at the same time. Those of us who had parents or grandparents who grew up in the Depression or the wartime, those people sadly are fading away now. But all of those people recycled all the time. They made things themselves, they borrowed things from family members. I'm sure many of our listeners and viewers who had a student house were given some furniture by the family to start things. And of course, as students, we also roamed the streets at night coming home from the clubs and we'd find things. In fact, you know, it depends on part. We can find great stuff anywhere in back lanes and streets. I walked through the streets of Paddington one night and found a fantastic, great big white wicker chair that was very heavy that I had to carry down the hill and just fitted in the back of my car. And it graces my balcony now up in the Blue Mountains. And over the years, I found all sorts of great stuff in the eastern suburbs. Is a bit of a treasure trove. But the people move, there's nothing worse than sending things to landfill. So this new trend to recycle, upcycle, it's become a real social movement. It's quite strong in places like Italy, where there are sort of upcycling banks along streets and rivers where you can go along and pick out pieces of furniture. Many city councils actually have these kind of recycling centres now instead of throwing everything to landfill, which is fantastic. And this all ties in with a whole lot of things like the rise of vintage, people being very nostalgic about the past. But we've also got to think about it in terms of value, because people are always impressed by the antiques market, the auction houses, but all old paintings and chairs that are called antiques are old things. They just have different value apportioned to them. So you found a real little charmer in the street.
Well, I think it was a charmer, and it's almost, when you look at it, it's kind of humanesque, almost with the split. It's sort of like a split of the lip of the mouth. And I don't know, it just had this great character about it. And to bring it back to life, using one of the designs from our collection, it just gave an extra depth to the story behind it. And then if we are able to discover the purpose of the chair and what it was for and its era, and again, that's really what it's about, to find out the stories of our past and see how we can bring them to life.
Yes, that's the great thing about objects. We really wish they could talk back to us a little bit.
Yes.
Maybe we don't need to know all their stories. But your chair, I liked looking at it. It only took me about 2 minutes to work out what I think it is. I think it's a type, it would have been some ladies' pride and joy. I think it's a type of chair that was made to go into bedrooms for a woman to put her stockings on or sit down to get dressed. That's what I feel it is, yes. The French tradition of the 18th century had lots of these types of lower chairs for women to use. Some had low backs and were for hairdressing, for example. A chair like that wouldn't be for hairdressing. And the French also had a lot of different type of chairs. In fact, there are dozens of different words in French for chair that don't exist in English. They had little chairs to sit by the fireplace. And you see these often in Americans like using them in high style interior design. And they're good for parties because you can move them around easily. They're light and portable. In fact, the word for furniture in French is meuble, which means movable. And it meant that the furniture wasn't static. But I think this is, it looks like it's covered in an old post-war 1960s Draylon. It kind of looks a bit like a mushroom color. So I feel this would have been part of possibly a suite of bedroom furniture. And sometimes these low chairs were called nursing chairs for nursing infants as well. But they tended to be often a little practical for spillage of the baby. So I have a feeling that it's part of a bedroom suite, but you could really use a chair like that beautifully in a small apartment for mobile seating, around the fireplace, around the edge of the room.
It's interesting. I often find myself drawn to it, and I sit in it, and it's kind of like a pause chair. It's a lounge chair. It's not, something that you would, I know you wouldn't sort of necessarily sit and read a book on it or anything like that, but I find myself just sitting on it sometimes and just looking around the rest of the room.
So it's a sort of intermediary chair.
Yeah.
And in the past we did have telephone chairs in the 20th century for when the phones were connected to the wall. You had to have somewhere to sit. There were all sorts of interesting little chairs and benches. I remember my great aunt had a very grand rosewood one with the telephone and the drawer to keep the numbers in next to it.
Yes.
So people, there were a lot of different pleasures about furniture. Furniture provides us with comfort and support, and it's a kind of a prop to our life, the way we live. And so that type of chair is also very much a middle class or upper middle class type of piece of furniture, in that it's a luxury. So you've got a little luxury item. It's not that chair is not a necessity.
Yeah. I loved how you said, a lady's chair for dressing, and I've thought about that, and imagining a lady putting her stockings on, and particularly, I guess, of that era, they were stockings, like individual for each leg, rather than sort of tights. And it seems so elegant.
Yeah, and men also, there was furniture for men to help them get dressed. Everybody remembers those little suit racks. And any good hotel in the world will have a low chair to help you get dressed. It's either the stool at the end of the bed or a nice low chair, or else you're looking around thinking, I've got this difficult pair of evening patent shoes to put on. I've forgotten my shoehorn. What am I going to do? So dressing in the past was a little bit more complex, and people dress for different times of the day. That's fading away now.
And so what era would you say this chair was? I guessed that it was a reproduction of something else anyway.
I think it's a post-war, probably 1960s reproduction of something in a kind of French manner, with the curves at the back. It's a little bit like the French Rococo style, but simplified. And the Victorians also liked that kind of shape. They made a lot of balloon back chairs, but they didn't upholster furniture exactly in that same way. So the funny thing about that chair is also when somebody, it might look a little bit old-fashioned to us, but to the person buying that in the 60s, it's actually very modern, because it's streamlined, it's new materials, it's Draylon, which was a bit easier to wipe down and repelled water. And it's got a nice kind of smooth finish to it. So a lot of furniture, helps oscillate between the tradition and the future, tradition and modernity. So I'm really excited about the way you recovered it and given it a whole new identity, if you like.
It's pretty cool, isn't it? Now, here's my Antiques Roadshow question. If you were to purchase this chair, what would you value it at?
Oh, okay. Well, yes, I do very well. My friends used to sit at me watching Antiques Roadshow and say, "My God, you should be running it." Well, I should be a dealer. Look, at the moment, vintage secondhand furniture and reproduction furniture doesn't have great monetary value in the auction house market. You could pick up a chair like that for as cheaply as $20. I'd be surprised if you paid more than 50 because it's not in great condition. It's not that old, but once it's recovered, it takes on a whole new life. It becomes very desirable, and it's definitely in a retail establishment, it could be obviously well over $1,000. And good upholstery work itself, labor is very much more expensive than it was in the past. And if the chair's nice and solid, if it doesn't creak, if the structure is good, it's more valuable than a chair that's rickety that you've got to spend money on. And believe me, I've spent a lot of money over the years restoring old chairs.
Well, I think that's great to hear, because the new life that it's got now is that and I very much love the elegance of the design of Songbird that we chose for it. And I think it adds to the, I don't know, the structure or the movement, the curves of the chair and how it goes. And I think that's really quite lovely.
It's Florence, isn't it?
No, that one's just a generic one from our collection. But
in a way, it fits nicely with someone like a post-war decorator in Sydney, in a well-to-do suburb. That's exactly the kind of thing they would have liked to pop into a room. It's a nice bag to have in a hallway to put your bags on when you come home.
Yes.
It's a nice little. You can sit there and flip through a magazine while you wait for the Uber to arrive. It's a really nice chair. Yeah.
Peter, thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat with us about this. It's been wonderful to hear your insights into what we have. And I think it's so beautiful to have the opportunity to find treasures like this and to upcycle and to be called on by people in the public to say, look, this is what I've got, what can we do, and how we can work together on it. And your insight has been fantastic. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks so much for letting these objects have another life. And it's so much better for the world. And also they embody these little stories and narratives that either are real or imagined, but they're part of the piece of furniture.
It's so true, isn't it? It's so true.
Thank you, Margaux.
All right, I'll speak to you soon. Thanks, Peter. Take care.